Welcome back to my forgiveness myth busting series. And I'm talking about forgiveness, this extraordinary mental and emotional practice that most of us either ignore or fumble over or struggle with. Or you want me to what? Of course, you never have to forgive anyone, ever. That's the truth of it. You don't ever have to forgive anyone. But that's number 11. This is number 3 in the series of myth busting. And I want to talk today about the fact that there is nothing that is unforgivable. What? Yeah, there's nothing that is unforgivable. And what I mean by this is you're the one who's holding onto the resentment, and you're the one who's choosing whether or not to hold on to it or to let it go. That means that it doesn't matter how terrible the thing was or how slight the thing was. If you're the one who is holding the ill will, this is what we gather up in our hearts. If you're the one who's holding this, your ability to let go of your grievance, your pain, your hurt, and to release yourself of your resentment about it is not dependent on the thing that happened, the person who did it to you, or how long ago it happened, or anything about the actual event or series of events. Your ability to let go of the ill will is in your hands. You can choose to let it go. But that doesn't mean it's easy. And that was one of the reasons that I wrote my book, because I was interested in all the different things that get in the way of our ability to let go. And when I was working on a retreat, I had great privilege of working on a retreat for 7 years. And we were helping people to go through juice fasting and then also doing deep emotional work. And I was fascinated by how easily or not people were able to access forgiveness. And everyone's different, and you don't have to forgive anyone. But if you're interested in freeing your heart of the resentment, of really resolving the past, then forgiveness is a really powerful thing that you can do, like a piece of work. It's a really powerful part of your healing, often one of the last parts of your healing. There's quite a lot of untangling that needs to happen before that. What's amazing is, as I would work with the clients who would come on the retreats, there seemed to be very little correlation between something that had happened and someone's ability to forgive it. So we would often be working with people who had childhood abuse, sometimes sexual, sometimes emotional, physical, sometimes all of them. Sometimes they had early trauma, things that happened, a parent died, or they were separated from their families, all kinds of very challenging things. And then we'd also have clients who had what seemed to be much more lucky lives, lucky circumstances. They were very privileged or came from very stable backgrounds. And there wasn't a correlation between the ability of the people who had difficulties and great trauma and the people who didn't, or who had much milder trauma. So there would be one woman perhaps, or one man who had been told that they were ugly or fat, or some other unkindness had happened, or there'd been like an exchange at a wedding between family members and that hadn't gone well. And they would have just as much difficulty in forgiving as the people who had been significantly abused. And I found that absolutely fascinating, because it means that ultimately nothing is unforgivable, because it's about your heart and what you choose to do. And it doesn't mean that there aren't some things that are downright wrong. Any kind of abuse is unacceptable. And we're really clear about what is and isn't acceptable in our society. And even though there are some things that are not acceptable, they still happen. We have laws about certain things. We have moral preferences. There are some things that we will accept, some things that we won't. And that's important, that we know what is right and what is wrong. There are certain things that are wrong, and I won't lecture about those. There's some things that are just obvious, that if you're doing harm, damage to another being, human or otherwise, then there's something wrong about that. You can still choose to forgive it, which means to refuse to hold the ill will against it. And that's a really important point, because otherwise, how is it that people have consistently through history been able to forgive even the most heinous crimes, like Nelson Mandela being imprisoned for decades, can choose to walk out of that prison and genuinely forgive his imprisoners, because he said he knew that if he didn't forgive them, it would be like he would still be in prison. Or Martin Luther King or Christ. Think about who are your exemplars of people who actually forgive. Do you admire them more than the people who hold resentment and take it to their deathbed, or not? I mean, of course, it's up to you. You are completely free to carry all of your resentment and chew it over every night of your life as much as you want. The wrongness of something, how much the other person hurt you. You can resend that. That's the origin of the word of resentment, sentir, to feel. Re-feel that through the whole of your body, night after night, as long as you want. Thoroughly enjoy it. So you are holding on to resentment, or you're choosing to let it go. You're choosing voluntarily taking that agonizing position of letting it go. And the letting it go is really important. If you think about when you give up a habit, that's the excruciating thing, is you're letting something go. The ending of a relationship, letting something go. Someone's death, letting someone go. And that's the amazing thing. Like the true, powerful, spiritual practice of forgiveness, or if you prefer, secular ethics or mental and emotional well-being practice of forgiveness, is exactly that. It's the hardest of all the things that we're required to do as a human being in life, is to withstand the letting go of things, the surrender of our insistence that things be a particular way or they be different. So in my book, there is nothing that is unforgivable. There are things that are terrible and that we really could be doing differently as a humanity. In the great weighing scales of life, if something happens, it feels like we then have to do the same thing so that the other person will understand how it's been for us, so we get even. But the truth is, it's about resentment, and that's what we're not looking at. We're holding hatred in our hearts and we're choosing to feed it. Truth is, if you have a raging fire inside of you, then you are the fuel. It saps your energy. It takes your life force. It changes your attitude towards life. It depletes your well-being. It changes your relationships. So it's really a bit of a bum deal. But like I said, you're entitled to carry your resentment to your grave if you prefer. But from my point of view, there's nothing that cannot be forgiven. Your forgiveness is not dependent on the other person apologizing or making amends. Otherwise, you could be waiting here for a really long time, and then the person dies. And then what do? Still waiting. I'll wait here with my resentment. Delicious resentment. What do you do with it? So what you do, find your way onto the path of forgiveness and learn to let it go. And I'm not saying it's easy. That's why I wrote my book, to help to make it easier. But the fact is, there's nothing that's unforgivable. And that may be good for you to know, because if you're somebody who's holding on to resentment against themselves for something that they believe is unforgivable, then hopefully this is helpful to you. And I want to do everything in my power to help create a world that is no longer at war. And I believe the very best thing that we can do, the place to start, because I don't have any power in the political world, the best place I can start is on my own heart, and make that a garden of peace. And if I make my heart a garden of peace, and you make your heart a garden of peace, and the people around you make their hearts gardens of peace, then eventually this flourishing, this decision that we can make as a humanity, that I do not want to be the victim of my ill will anymore. I'm going to take control over who I hate and what I do with my hate. And I'm going to choose to direct my energy towards either changing what needs to be changed, or healing what needs to be healed, or defending what needs to be defended, and speaking truth to power. So I hope this has been helpful. If it is, please check out my other work, probably here and here. I host online forgiveness fields where you can come and practice forgiveness. It's hard. So when we do it together, I guide everybody through my process, and I do a little bit of introduction at the beginning, and then take everybody through my Forgiveness Made Easy process so that you can actually have an experience of the ritual of forgiveness, which I think it helps if you have a way of doing it. And you may need a long run up, so you may need to watch all of these videos, or you may just surprise yourself and show up at one. And there's a few people also that I do work one-to-one with, so if you're interested in going a bit deeper, I also do that. I hope to be of service to you on your forgiveness journey. And as I always say, your forgiveness is an act of amnesty for the whole of humanity. When you forgive, the world is a more beautiful place.